I'm really concerned and nervous that when Karine finds out about my past, that she's gonna just walk away like all the other women did.
In a world where a man from Louisville, Kentucky, flies to Brazil in a hazmat mask to marry a woman who is 21 years old, you would think the hazmat mask was the red flag. It was not. The red flag was already on file in a courthouse in Jefferson County, stamped 2007.
I have a lengthy criminal record. I've been in jail, I've been in prison for numerous things.
Arson. Paul Staehle, at the age of 27, was charged with second-degree arson and insurance fraud for setting fire to his own property. 5 years later, he was tried. 7 years later, he was convicted. And somewhere between the match and the verdict, he decided to fly to Brazil and put the whole thing on television.
And spent about 18 months in jail.
This is the part people forget. Paul did not get caught. Paul told on himself, not to a priest, not to a lawyer, on TLC, a basic cable network, in front of the nation, with a translator, to the Brazilian in-laws of a 21-year-old English teacher from Belo Horizonte. He volunteered.
Pierre and Paul were supposed to be in the Child Protective Services custody at the time. The boys were eventually placed in foster care, and then a long battle for Paul and Karine to regain the custody of their children began.
And then, 6 years later, a protective order. Not filed by a stranger, filed by a previous partner, which he also violated, which is the thing that gets somebody a second-tier federal headache, not a fourth-tier basic cable romance. And yet, the franchise said, yes, perfect, put him on the prequel show.
What his wife Karine is posting, by what she's posting, it alludes to the fact that he may be dead. I mean, trigger warning. And I hope that's not the case. But
his past. The way a man says past when he means open case file. This is the founding document of the Paul Staehle cinematic universe. Not a man in love. A man in love sitting, repeatedly called, and oppressedly rational. Paul was in his mid-40s. Karine had no felony record. Paul had 2. This is the couple. This is the show. This is what TLC greenlit. And this is what America agreed to watch for the better part of a decade.
Paul went live.
Yes, the hazmat mask. 2017, 3 years before a pandemic, Paul walks off the jetway wearing full respiratory gear, like he is arriving at Chernobyl Season 1. He tells Karine this is because he has read the Zika advisories. It is, instead, the first piece of a long public performance of Paul as perpetually besieged, perpetually under attack, perpetually the victim of his own circumstances. The code is heavier than it looks.
Paul ended up releasing messages. Let's see. Sorry, guys.
Brazilian immigration, which has seen things, flagged Paul's U.S. criminal record as containing what they described, in translation, as terrorism-adjacent charges. They declined his application for permanent residency. A federal government, one you may have heard of, looked at this man's paperwork and said, respectfully, no. And the man being turned down at the border was the protagonist of the show we were watching. So here is the pivot, and here is where the joke changes shape. Because if you read Paul as a bumbler, as Reddit has for 8 straight years, you miss what is actually...
He was arrested, and he did go to jail for that.
The I did nots, the I would nevers, The carefully phrased denials that are not denials, the invocation of misunderstandings, the gentle reframing of documented events as interpretations. This is not the vocabulary of a confused man. This is the vocabulary of a man who has sat across from a public defender and memorized the phrase, open.
I did not see it, Kelsey. I did see where John said he was going live, but I didn't watch it yet. Oh, that is true. At least he didn't kill his wife. That's true.
My wife. He uses the phrase like a shield. Every dispute is reframed as domestic. Every accusation becomes a quarrel. Every act of documented violence becomes, in Paul's telling, a misunderstanding between spouses that ought to be adjudicated in private. This is not the framing of a man who trusts the institutions. This is the framing of a man who is preparing for the institutions.
Remember where I saw that, but he did. He said Karine was trying to get custody back of Paul, but Karine was trying to get custody back of the children, but he would not be able to see the kids.
And in the end, the institutions came anyway. 2022, custody of both sons, Pierre and Ethan, transferred to foster care by court order, not a private disagreement, a removal. The state of Kentucky, which had once convicted Paul of arson, now took his children. The courtroom receipts are public. The cast of the reality show is not invited.
Hospital, but he did get there, and him and Karine made up, and he was there for the birth of his first son, Pierre. They had a second son in November 2021.
And here is the walkback, because this show is rarely a clean morality play. Surveillance footage from 2020 captures Karine grabbing Paul by the hair and shoving him. She is 24 at the time. He is 46. The inverse abuse clip. The complication Reddit would like to skip, and which the franchise would like to skip, and which a fair accounting cannot. The violence in that marriage was not unilateral. It was documented in both directions.
Will they pay out without a body for life insurance? I don't know much about life insurance.
But here's where the theater returns. Full orchestral swell. Because in 2023, Paul posts a video announcing that he is missing in the Brazilian Amazon. Self-announced. From a selfie camera. With geotagging. Narrating his own disappearance like a 90s trailer. Meanwhile, Karine, back in the United States, posts, and we are not making this up, about life insurance. The couple, separately, on separate continents, coincidentally begin to perform the opening sequence of a true crime podcast. Paul reemerges.
Maybe he's just dead to her. Because to everybody else, they're saying he's missing, which could be easy. Paul's not from Brazil, so it could be kind of easy if he took off by himself to get lost, right?
I can't go back to America. He says it into a phone camera, in a hammock, with a ring light. The line is the product of 1,000 Instagram lives designed to reach a custody judge without filing a single document. Every post is an affidavit. Every teary confessional is a deposition. He controls the edit on. Paul has figured out that if you narrate your own life loudly enough, the court of public opinion runs parallel to the court of record, and sometimes a judge's clerk sees the same TikTok everyone else did.
So it's like, why would you forget a man that, is missing? If my husband went missing, I would have complete faith that we'll find him. I'm definitely not gonna, the day after he went missing or 2 days after they went missing.
And Karine, meanwhile, is running her own parallel campaign, in Portuguese, on a different app, to a different audience, arguing to a Brazilian cultural register that the American husband has stranded her, deceived her, mismanaged her, suffered. All politicians live in the world. 2 legal strategies, in 2 languages, aimed at 2 overlapping but non-identical sets of family courts. This is not a marriage anymore. This is a transnational litigation.
Maybe she was too stressed out. Maybe she needed a moment and she didn't want Paul to leave and then her be there, struggling, trying to deal with her son. But there's been a lot going on between the two of them. Very, 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 very publicly. She took out a restraining order on him where she
Restraining order. 2020. Karine obtains one against Paul. The protective order cites allegations of physical assault and of sexual assault within the marriage. The order is real. The allegations are serious. The documentation is filed in a Kentucky court and entered into the public record. This is not theater. This is the system responding the way the system responds when it is asked to intervene. And yet the franchise footage from the same calendar year shows the couple eating together, arguing together, crying together, holding their infant son on a patio with a sponsored soft drink subtly turned to camera. And the second pivot here is that this is not unique to Paul. This is the franchise-wide discovery. Every cast member eventually realizes that the camera is a legal instrument. Angela files for divorce on Instagram. Andre litigates his immigration status through a confessional. Jasmine runs her paternity questions through a reunion stage. And Paul was early. Paul was the beta test for using TLC as an appellate brief.
We are looking to find out where Paul is. Unfortunately, we have to wait to a certain time to call the police. Wholeheartedly, this is not a joke. I was lost until messages arrived telling me everything.
I lied. 2 words that, in a courtroom, take 3 attorneys and 6 weeks. 2 words that on this show take a confessional and a shaky handheld zoo. Paul will admit things on camera he would never admit in a deposition. Because in the confessional, the admission is character, and in a deposition, the admission is perjury. This is why they keep signing up. The risk asymmetry is incredible. The franchise absorbs the liability. The cast member gets paid.
That would be weird that she would be here and he would be back in Brazil.
The franchise, meanwhile, pretends none of this is its problem. Paul's arson conviction was already public when he was cast. His protective order violation was already public when he was cast. Karine's age was already public when he was cast. TLC assembled every ingredient of the decade-long disaster we have just described, lit the pilot flame, and then acted surprised when the kitchen filled with smoke.
Good friends. Well, we all grow up, we get married, and he is a police officer. He is a police officer. Well, months before he dies or goes missing.
21. The age Karine was when this began. 21 is a year of your life in which the prefrontal cortex is still, as a matter of neurological development, finishing. 21 is a year in which you are not yet permitted to rent a car in most American states. And Paul, 43, with a felony record and an insurance fraud file and a prior protective order, signed a prenup with her under the supervision of a camera crew.
Okay, if the court issues a missing person declaration, the beneficiary can take it to the carrier and get a conditional payout under the rebuttal presumption of death. In this scenario, evidence...
Insurance fraud. Let us sit on that word for a second. The original conviction was not just for arson. It was for arson combined with insurance fraud. That is, the fire was set to collect a payout. A payout that would not have come if the claim had been honest. Paul's relationship to paperwork, to documentation, to the narrative that the system uses to decide who gets money and who does not, has been adversarial since 27. The camera did not create his habits. The camera handed him a bigger stage.
I think they lost the kids because of the constant fighting, the videos that came up.
The sons, Pierre and Ethan, in foster care because the state of Kentucky examined this entire public record and decided, in the most polite language a family court uses, that nobody in the frame was currently qualified. The franchise used footage of those children in promotional reels. It was, briefly, adorable. It is now, permanently, evidence. Consider, for a second, what foster care placement means procedurally. It is not a judgment made on a hunch. It is the end state of a long series of home visit assessments, interviews with social workers, review of housing conditions, financial capacity determinations, prior incident histories, and court-supervised attempts at reunification. To arrive at foster care placement, the state has already tried and documented failure at every lower intensity intervention. That is the paperwork trail sitting underneath a sentence in foster care. The franchise does not show the paperwork. The franchise shows the patio.
Of them fighting in front of the kids, getting physical in front of the kids. Yeah.
Ethan was born on camera. The birth scene ran in an episode. Paul cried. Karine cried. The cameras cried in their own way. Slow motion zooms, soft music, a corporate logo in the corner. The baby had a release form signed by his parents before he had a lung full of room air. And 2 years later, when the state took him, there was no release form at all. The cameras did not follow that scene. The cameras never do. The walk back, because we owe it. Paul is also, by every available indication, a man whose life got away from him early and never came back. The arson was set by a 27-year-old. The marriage was contracted by a 38-year-old. The Instagram disappearance was filmed by a 40-something. He has been, for a long time, visibly unwell, and the response of his country has been to put him on bail.
But his mom, as well as some other people, have posted things to at least back up the fact that he is in fact missing in Brazil, which is super, super dangerous to be missing in Brazil, especially people that aren't
Missing. The word he used about himself. Not went for a walk, not took some space. Missing. An active police status in most jurisdictions, a Facebook filter in the Amazon, used in the first person by a man announcing his own condition into the front-facing camera of his own phone. The announcement is the search party. The search party is the audience. The audience is the court of public opinion he has been cultivating for 6 years. You can mock the hazmat mask. You should not mock the hospitalization. The ramp, then. Paul Staehle is neither the franchise's fool nor its villain. He is its legal discovery process. He is the long, slow pre-trial phase of every other cast member's eventual litigation, rehearsed in advance, on camera, at scale. Every disappearance is a motion. Every confession is a stipulation. Every selfie is an Exhibit A. The franchise sells Paul as a character. Paul uses the franchise as a chambers. And the small distance between those two sentences is the entire reason his file will outlast the show. Someday, a federal clerk in Brazil, or in Kentucky, will open a drawer, and inside the drawer will be a box. And inside the box will be a stack of case numbers. Arson, fraud, protective order violation, custody termination, immigration denial, restraint order, domestic assault allegation, missing person filing, international recovery effort, and threading all of them together as supporting exhibits, as character evidence, as the man's own words about the man's own life, will be a pile of TLC episodes. Paul Staehle, long before the trial, had already rehearsed his closing argument. And he rehearsed it, and he rehearsed it, and he rehearsed it, and a network, doing business under a Cable Content Act filing, paid him to reverse it in high definition. When the trailer voice finishes its narration, the courtroom lights stay on. And one day the custody judge, or the immigration judge, or the judge who has not yet been named, will sit down in chambers, and will be handed a case file, and will open it, and the case file will already be 7 seasons long. Paul Staehle did not get on TLC to fall in love. He got on TLC so that when the subpoena arrived, he could say, "Your Honor, the record is already public." If you made it this far, you either love me or you're looking for something to yell about in the comments. Either way, like, subscribe, and tell